My YouTube feed is littered with videos from people who are having problems with their chickens. And you know what? Keeping chickens is not that complicated. They're pretty simple to keep healthy, actually. So today we're going to have a look at what I do to keep my chickens healthy. I think chickens are a fantastic animal to keep, and I really want as many people who can keep chickens to keep chickens. And my concern about the YouTube space, where all these videos are just about all the problems that can go wrong with your chicken flock, is that people think that keeping chickens is hard, that everything's going to go wrong, that they can't just jump in and start having a go, because keeping chickens, well, it's not like keeping an ocelot or even like keeping tropical fish. They're really easy to look after. You get your basics right and you're not going to have very many problems. So I would really like to just lower the drama level a little bit. I do understand that drama and things going wrong will get the click, but that is not what this channel is about. And that's not what I want people to think keeping chickens is about either, because they're easy. They're the easiest animal to get started with. Everyone can have a healthy, happy chicken flock. And let's go over exactly how I manage my flock, the things I'm looking for, so that I don't end up with these dramatic problems. And I'm unfortunately never going to make a dramatic video for you about this topic.
Hey, sitting like a boss, bring the workers out. Press on the exhaust, we be skirting now. No, we not the same, what you talk?
The most important tool in my chicken keeping toolbox is using my eyes. And I like to use them every single day. I go out and I look at my chickens. And I think to myself, do they look okay? Are they behaving normally? Are they behaving differently today than they were behaving yesterday? So that is your biggest thing you can do, and most people can use their eyes to go out and check on the health of their chicken flock. So some of the specific things that I'm looking at when I'm looking at my flock, and again, this is the most important thing to do, because you will pick up on any issues in your flock really early on before it's a problem if you're paying attention. So I'm looking at how their general health looks, because a healthy chicken is going to be generally calm, generally just happy wandering around doing her natural chicken behaviors. She's going to have nice glossy shiny feathers. Even a chicken that is a white color or a dull color will have bright glossy feathers in the sunshine, so you can tell if they start to look dull, if they're starting to behave in a listless fashion, or they're drooping their wings, things like that. You can pick that up straight away and you know, oh, I need to keep a better eye on this particular chicken. And sometimes I will do that. I will say, oh, this one particular chicken, I need to make sure I look at her really closely tomorrow and the next day to make sure she's okay. Most of the time she is okay, sometimes she isn't. But you've got to look, pay attention to your flock, and then you're gonna nip any issues really early on. One of my chickens just the other day was acting a little strangely. She was walking a few steps and then she'd stop and sort of try and strain as if she wasn't able to poop, or if she maybe needed to lay an egg. And I thought, well, that's a bit odd. Noted it, kept an eye on her throughout the day and the next day, and you know what, she was fine. There was no problem. But I had noticed that there might be a problem starting, and I would have been able to jump on that if it was still a behavior that she was exhibiting the next day. You need to know that every single member of your flock is eating and drinking, because a sick chicken will generally not eat and they won't drink very often either. So if your flock, they are out there, they're drinking their water, they're eating their food, they're doing their normal thing, arguing about who gets what food, and they're in there enthusiastic about eating, then you know they're probably okay. But if you're noticing that some of them or one of them is not that into eating, maybe just pecking sort of half-heartedly at the food, then you know that there might be a problem. Keep an eye on it. So eating and drinking is a great way to know that your flock is happy and healthy, and that's true. Well, that's true for most animals and people. If you don't want to eat and drink, if your dog or your cat or your cow or your child isn't wanting to eat and drink, they're probably not feeling that good. So just use that same information, apply it to your chicken flock, and you're going to be able to get on top of any issues before they turn into something that you could make a YouTube video out of. A major health indicator for your chickens is their poop, which is kind of gross, but it is a great indicator of health. So chicken poop can change. It's not, if it suddenly changes, it's dramatic or wrong, or something's gonna go wrong with your flock or your chickens. But you need to know what the range of normal is for your flock, so that when something does start to go off, or it's going off for longer than usual, you can step in and make an intervention. So chicken poop can be runny, it can be solid, it can be all sorts of different things, and that can be in the range of normal, but there should be a reason for why it is one way or the other. So sometimes my chicken poop, I can see that it's got lots of sort of grass in it because they've been eating grass, so that makes sense. That's why it looks like that. If they are quite hot and they're drinking lots of water, then their poop can get a little more runny. Again, there's a reason for it. That makes sense. If they're eating lots of dark colored plums and their poop goes a dark color, it makes sense. But if you see a change that doesn't have a reason and it is ongoing for more than a few days, then you might have a problem. Mostly in this case, in my flock, it would be that their parasite load is starting to get a bit too high, but there are some other things that cause chicken poop to go off, runny, frothy, different colored. The main thing there would be coccidiosis, which is generally only an issue in younger chickens. By the time they have become adults, it's usually less of a problem, but it can pop up at any time, and that is something that may or may not be able to be managed. You can go to your vet and get something to help your chickens with that, but again, it's not usually a huge issue in an adult flock, so I wouldn't jump straight to that conclusion. Keep an eye on their poop. I use it as an indicator that they probably need to have a dewormer put through them. And that's sort of the same with poopy butts. So some chickens are just going to have poopy butts. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a health crisis. Depending on the time of year, what they're eating, the same sort of things for their poop, they might just have a poopy butt. I have one chicken who just always has a poopy butt, no matter what. It's just how she is. It's kind of gross. I've cleaned her up. I've done all sorts of different things, and she just always has a poopy butt, and she's totally fine. Most of my flock don't have that issue, and again, if I start to see a lot of poopy butts wandering around the backyard, then I know I probably need to step in with some parasite management. On the topic of parasites, I want to talk about mites and lice. So this is something that, well, all chickens have to a certain extent, but if you let the numbers get too high, it can have really negative consequences for your flock. So lice are something that isn't a huge big deal for healthy chickens, because they will generally take care of lice themselves by grooming them out of their feathers. That's where the poopy butt can become an issue, because they can't groom to the base of where they might have poop sticking to their feathers, and that gives a place for lice to hang out and breed. So that could be one issue with poopy butts, and it's why you don't want to sort of ignore poopy butts for too long, and you might need to clean them up. But generally, lice are not going to be a major issue with healthy chickens. If you have a sick chicken that you're needing to isolate and she's not doing very well, then I would go ahead and treat her for lice, because she's not going to be able to keep on top of that herself while she's not feeling well. And then it's mites, in particular the red poultry mite, which is just the nightmare of all chicken keepers, and you've got to stay on top of that. Some strategies I use for that is, well, first of all, keeping an eye on the load to see if I'm finding mites in the coop. The best way to do that is to check at nighttime, to just get a tissue or a bit of paper towel and scoot it along the bottom of the perches. And if it comes off with mites, with particularly blood smears or something on there, then you know that you've got some mites in your coop. There's gonna be mites pretty much in anyone's coop, no matter what, all the time to a certain extent. It's about managing how many there are. Strategies I use for that is I lime washed my main coop, and that is an actual hydrated lime with salt mixed up, like old-fashioned, old school lime wash, not like whitewash with paint, not that, actual lime, painted it all over everywhere, and that makes an inhospitable environment for the mites to breed and complete their life cycle. And I also used a predatory mite that likes to eat the red poultry mites, and that worked really, really well, and I would highly recommend looking into what sort of predatory mites might be available for sale wherever you happen to be in the world. There's different ones in different places, but that is a great one. And if it is becoming a major issue, you can use the ivermectin type dewormer, which will work on external parasites. But I always like to leave the chemical option as the last resort, not the first go-to. So just some things to keep in mind, because high external parasite loads will also cause just as many issues as a high internal parasite load in your flock. I see a lot of videos about chicken behavioral issues. Things like egg eating, feather picking, excessive aggression. Now, all of these things are generally symptomatic of something that's going wrong in the environment that the chickens are being kept in. And you can avoid those issues or get on top of them pretty quickly. It's a lot easier to avoid them from happening in the first place, but they can, in most cases, be fixed even once they've started. I'll talk about egg eating first. Now, eggs are food, and chickens think that they are too. And if they get into a habit, whether it happened by mistake, they found a broken egg and they ate it and then were like, hey, this is pretty cool, they can get into a habit of breaking and eating the eggs. I've had a few hens that like to do this in my flock. And what I found was the solution to that, and it's pretty consistent, is making sure they have enough protein in their diet. If their protein drops down, if I stop feeding them their meat meal for a few days, they will start eating eggs. And as soon as it goes back in and they've had it in their diet again for a couple of days, they will stop eating the eggs. So, do that. Feed them more protein. Sometimes a hen is just going to keep doing it no matter what, in which case it has become a habit and you need to do some extra steps for that. And there are videos to find out how to stop your hen from pecking the eggs and eating them. It may not work once it's a habit. You might have to remove that hen from your flock before she teaches everyone that this is a good idea. But generally, if you keep the protein high, they're going to be a lot less interested in eating their own eggs. Other behavioral issues like excessive aggression or picking at another hen's feathers are generally symptomatic of just the wrong balance in the flock. Feather picking can be a protein issue as well. They can be not having a sufficient diet and then be pecking at feathers, but generally it's a boredom behavior, as is excessive aggression. If you've got a small, not very interesting chicken run and your hens are just cruising around without much to do all day, then they will decide to beat each other up for amusement. And it's not exclusive to chickens, but chickens can take aggression to some pretty extreme levels, and it can be quite distressing. You definitely want to avoid it happening so it doesn't become a habit. And that's easy to do. Make sure your chickens have enough space, that they have enough to do, that you break line of sight so that any chicken that is being picked on can get out of the way. So that's just having lots of different little hidey spots in your run that a bullied chicken can just duck away, and the one that's bullying her will chickens have a relatively short attention span. They get bored and go and do something else if they're not getting the fulfillment in the moment. So that's easy to manage. Some breeds are more aggressive than others. Sometimes a group of chickens just don't get along and you have to change the mix. But generally, with enough space and a good setup and without being bored, aggression is gonna be just not an issue. And the feather picking won't be an issue and the bullying won't be an issue. It just won't be an issue. But if you cram them up together, they don't have anything to do, then of course they are going to be aggressive. And that can come back to diet again as well. If they're not getting everything they need from their diet, it can cause them to, I guess, be grumpy, particularly the protein that really does keep them happy. And then they might decide to just be grumpy with each other, and that can escalate into full-on aggression. And once you have in chickens, they can be very brutal. Once you have a situation escalating into extreme aggression, they all sort of get in on the mix, and it can be really brutal, and they can actually kill each other. And that is not pretty. It hasn't actually happened to me, but I have seen it happen before. Don't let that happen. Make sure you have enough space for your chickens, that they have enough to do, and that you are feeding them properly, and you're just not gonna have these problems. If you have just one chicken that is just being a dick, get rid of her. The flock peace and quiet is more important than one chicken's opinion on the matter. So if you have one chicken that's just not fitting in, resolve the situation so everyone else can live in peace.
Tell him don't play with me, bitch, I got gang with me. This one trade with me. I've been up late viewing tape for the sake of it. Heart do the race on stage. I got here to the Great Lakes, let me slide in the rap like a
The theme of this video today is really just to say keeping chickens is not that complicated. I hope what I've talked about today doesn't seem complicated. It's really just paying attention and having common sense. So don't believe everything you see on the internet. Keeping chickens is like the least dramatic thing you can do. They're really easy. It's easy to learn about them, and they're very forgiving. If you do something wrong, you're unlikely to cause a giant disaster. So if you want to get chickens, you can get chickens. It's going to be okay. It's Christmas Day here and Christmas Eve for some of my viewers, so I just want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a great holiday season.